Billionaire abandoned his pregnant wife 5 years ago. Now she's the only surgeon who can save him. The consultation room felt smaller than it should have, even with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Julian Ashford sat rigid in the leather chair, his hands gripping the armrests as he stared at the woman standing across from him. She wore professional attire, her pregnant belly visible beneath her silk blouse, and her expression was as calm as still water. Dr. Vivian Laurent, the name on her credentials, the face from his nightmares. She looked directly at him, her voice steady and clinical. "Mr. Ashford, I need you to understand something very clearly. The device we'll be implanting requires 6 hours of surgery. 6 hours where your chest will be open on my operating table. 6 hours where every beat of your failing heart would depend entirely on my hands, my decisions, my skill." Julian's throat felt dry. "Vivian, Dr. Laurent," she corrected, her tone sharp enough to cut. "And before you say whatever you're about to say, let me finish. Your heart is functioning at 15% capacity. Without this surgery, you have perhaps 2 months. With it, you might live to see next year. Maybe longer if you're very, very lucky." She stepped closer, her amber eyes never leaving his face. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to lie on that table. You're going to trust your life, completely and entirely, to the woman whose life you destroyed 5 years ago. The woman you abandoned while she was pregnant with your child. The woman you called a burden and a distraction." Julian felt the color drain from his face. The other doctors in the room shifted uncomfortably. "And I'm going to save you," Vivian continued, her voice dropping lower. "Not because you deserve it. Not because I've forgiven you. But because I took an oath to heal every patient who needs me, even the ones who shatter me into pieces," and walked away without looking back. She placed a folder on the table between them. "Your life will be entirely in my hands. Julian, how does that feel? Have you ever come face to face with someone from your past, someone you wronged so badly you can't even look at yourself in the mirror at the exact moment when you needed them most? Have you ever felt karma wrap its fingers around your throat and squeeze? This is a story about power, about betrayal, about the moment when everything you've done comes back to find you. And trust me, you won't see this coming. If you believe in justice, if you've ever watched someone reap what they sowed, you need to hear this story from beginning to end. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will restore your faith that the universe keeps score. Let me take you back to where this all began. The automatic doors of the medical building slid open, and Julian Ashford walked through them like a man approaching his own execution. His assistant Trevor followed 2 steps behind, carrying files and looking concerned. "Mr. Ashford, perhaps we should reschedule. You look pale." "I'm fine," Julian snapped, though his heart was hammering irregularly in his chest, reminding him exactly why he was here. He'd spent the last 3 weeks seeing specialists. The diagnosis had been unanimous: severe cardiomyopathy, heart failure, imminent death without intervention. He needed a left ventricular assist device, a mechanical pump that would do the work his dying heart could no longer manage. And according to every expert he consulted, there was only one surgeon in America with a success rate worth trusting: Dr. Vivian Laurent. The name had meant nothing to him when his cardiologist first mentioned it. He'd been too focused on survival to pay attention to details. All he'd heard was best in the country and 97% survival rate. He'd told Trevor to book the appointment immediately. Money was no object. He wanted the best. Now, waiting in the consultation room of Columbia Presbyterian's executive medical suite, Julian checked his watch for the 3rd time. He hated waiting. 42 years old, billionaire founder of Ashford Biotech, accustomed to people accommodating his schedule, not the other way around. The door opened. An older man entered first, silver-haired and distinguished, wearing a white coat with Columbia Presbyterian embroidered on the pocket. "Mr. Ashford, I'm Dr. Philip Montgomery, Chief of Cardiothoracic Surgery. Thank you for your patience." Julian stood, shaking his hand. "I was told I'd be meeting with Dr. Laurent." "You will. She's just finishing with another patient." Dr. Montgomery gestured for him to sit. "While we wait, let me explain why Dr. Laurent is uniquely qualified for your case. As the chief surgeon began outlining credentials, the door opened again. Two younger doctors entered, a man and a woman, both carrying medical equipment. "This is Dr. Samuel Chun and Dr. Rachel Kim from our cardiology department," Montgomery said, and then she walked in. Julian's heart, already failing, seemed to stop completely. She was pregnant, visibly so, perhaps 6 or 7 months along. She wore gray slacks and a cream-colored blouse, her dark auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried a leather portfolio and a tablet, walking with quiet confidence. But it was her face that made Julian's world tilt on its axis. He knew that face, those high cheekbones, those amber eyes that had once looked at him with love and trust. That small scar above her left eyebrow from when she'd fallen during a camping trip in their second year of marriage. No, it couldn't be. And this, Dr. Montgomery continued, gesturing toward her with obvious respect, is Dr. Vivian Laurent, head of our LVAD program and the finest cardiac surgeon I've ever had the privilege of working with. Vivian's eyes met Julian's. For just a fraction of a second, something flickered across her face. Recognition, surprise, and then nothing. Her expression smoothed into professional neutrality. "Mr. Ashford," she said, her voice calm and measured. "It's been a long time." Dr. Montgomery looked between them, confused. "You two know each other?" "We were married," Vivian said simply, as if commenting on the weather. "Briefly, several years ago. It won't affect my professional judgment if Mr. Ashford chooses to proceed with me as a surgeon." The room went completely silent. Dr. Chun and Dr. Kim exchanged glances. Trevor's mouth fell open. Julian couldn't speak. His brain was struggling to reconcile the woman standing in front of him with his memories. The last time he'd seen Vivian, she'd been a struggling third-year resident, exhausted and heartbroken, signing divorce papers with shaking hands. She'd been broken, defeated. This woman was neither of those things. However, Vivian continued, setting her portfolio on the conference table. "If you prefer a different surgical team, Dr. Marcus Reeves at Johns Hopkins is also highly qualified for this procedure. His 90-day survival rate is 93%. There would be no personal history to complicate the physician-patient relationship." Julian found his voice, though it came out rougher than intended. "What's your survival rate?" 97%. Vivian met his eyes directly. "The highest in the country for this particular procedure. But I understand if you'd be more comfortable with someone else." The implication hung in the air. Choose the woman you destroyed, or risk death with second best. "I want you," Julian said. Then, realizing how that sounded, he added, "I want you as my surgeon. You're the best. That's what matters." Something that might have been amusement flickered in Vivian's eyes. "Very well. Let's discuss your condition." She moved to the large monitor on the wall and pulled up images from her tablet. Julian's heart appeared on the screen, and even to his untrained eye, it looked wrong. Enlarged, struggling, dying. "As you can see, Mr. Ashford, your condition is critical. This is your left ventricle. It should be pumping blood efficiently throughout your body. Instead, it's barely functioning. Your ejection fraction, the measurement of how much blood your heart pumps with each beat, is at 15%. Normal is between 50 and 70. She zoomed in on a specific area, her voice remaining clinical and detached. "The damage is extensive, likely caused by a combination of genetic factors and lifestyle stressors. You've had this developing for years, but your body compensated until recently. Now it can't compensate anymore. How long do I have?" Julian asked. "Without the surgery?" Vivian tilted her head, considering. 2 months, perhaps 3 if you're fortunate, and drastically reduce all physical and mental stress. But quality of life will be severely compromised. You'd be essentially bedridden on maximum medication, struggling to breathe. Heart failure isn't a gentle way to decline, Mr. Ashford. And with the surgery, with the LVAD, you could have years. The device will do the work your heart can't. You'll need to carry an external battery pack, follow strict protocols, and make significant lifestyle changes. But you'll be alive and functional. Eventually, you'd go on the transplant list for a full heart replacement. Dr. Montgomery stepped forward. Mr. Ashford, I want to be very clear. This surgery is complex and carries serious risks. But if anyone can perform it successfully, it's Dr. Lauren. She's pioneered several techniques that have improved outcomes dramatically. Surgeons come from around the world to learn from her. Julian looked at Vivian, really looked at her. She stood with perfect posture, one hand resting lightly on her pregnant belly, the other holding her tablet. Everything about her radiated competence and authority. This wasn't the exhausted, crying woman he remembered. This was someone who'd taken her pain and forged it into excellence. When would the surgery happen? He asked. We'll need to run additional tests first, Vivian replied. Assuming those confirm you're stable enough to survive the procedure, we could schedule it for next week. You'll need to be admitted to the hospital for pre-operative monitoring starting 3 days before. The surgery itself takes approximately 6 hours. Recovery in the ICU will be several days, then transfer to the cardiac floor for another week or 2. 6 hours, Julian repeated. It's a complex procedure. Vivian's expression didn't change. We're implanting a mechanical device into your failing heart, Mr. Ashford. It requires precision, patience, and expertise. She pulled up another image, this one showing a device that would be implanted. This is the LVAD unit. It connects to your left ventricle and your aorta, essentially taking over the pumping function. The internal pump is powered by an external battery pack that you will wear at all times. There are strict protocols about keeping the drive line, the connection point through your skin, clean and infection-free. Your life will change dramatically. I understand. Do you? Vivian's voice sharpened slightly. Because your medical history shows multiple missed cardiology appointments over the past 2 years. It shows a patient who was advised to reduce stress and ignored that advice. It shows someone who prioritized work over health until his body gave him no choice. She moved closer, her amber eyes intense. That behavior ends now. If I perform this surgery, you will follow every instruction I give you. You will attend every follow-up appointment. You will make your health a priority, not an afterthought. Because if you don't, you'll die anyway, and I won't waste my time on a patient who won't value the life I'm fighting to save. Julian felt like he'd been slapped. No one had spoken to him that way in years. He opened his mouth to object, then closed it. She was right, about all of it. I understand, he said quietly. Good. Vivian turned back to the monitor. Now, let me explain exactly what will happen during the surgery. For the next 45 minutes, she walked him through every detail. The incision down his sternum, the heart-lung machine that would keep him alive while she worked, the precise placement of the pump, the potential complications, stroke, bleeding, infection, death. She didn't soften anything. Every risk was laid out clearly. Dr. Chun and Dr. Kim added their perspectives on the cardiology aspects. Dr. Montgomery discussed the hospital stay and recovery timeline. But it was Vivian who dominated the room, her expertise and authority undeniable. Julian watched her hands as she gestured the diagrams. Steady, precise, confident. Surgeon's hands. The hands that would literally hold his heart. Finally, she set down her tablet and faced him directly. Do you have any questions, Mr. Ashford? He had 1,000 questions, but none of them were about the surgery. How did you become this? When did you stop being broken? Do you hate me? Can you possibly save someone you have every reason to let die? Instead, he asked, what's my alternative? If I say no to this? Vivian's expression softened, just slightly. You go home. You get your affairs in order. You spend what time you have left with people you love. You die, probably within 2 to 3 months. And if I say yes, then you trust me to save your life. She paused, and something unreadable crossed her face. Despite our history, despite everything that happened between us, you put your life entirely in my hands for 6 hours and hope that I'm as good as everyone says I am. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a blanket. Dr. Montgomery cleared his throat. Mr. Ashford, I'd like to emphasize again that Dr. Lauren's personal feelings, whatever they may be, have never once affected her surgical outcomes. She's saved patients who've been genuinely terrible people. She's saved patients who screamed at her in pre-op. She took an oath, and she honors it every single time. Vivian nodded. My job isn't to judge you, Mr. Ashford. My job is to repair your heart. The organ, not the metaphorical one. Whether you deserve saving isn't my decision to make. Whether I can save you is. Julian felt the strangest sensation, a mixture of relief and dread, hope and terror. He was going to survive. He was going to put his life in the hands of the woman whose life he'd destroyed. I want to proceed, he said, with you, as soon as possible. Very well. Vivian made a note on her tablet. My office will send over the pre-operative paperwork and testing schedule. You'll meet with our team several more times before surgery. I'll want an updated stress echocardiogram, full blood work, and a psychological evaluation. Psychological evaluation? We need to ensure you're mentally prepared for the lifestyle changes this will require. Depression and anxiety can significantly impact recovery outcomes. It's standard protocol. Of course. Vivian gathered her materials, preparing to leave. The other doctors began packing up their equipment. Dr. Laurent, Julian said, stopping her at the door. She turned back, one eyebrow raised. Thank you for agreeing to do this. For not, he trailed off, unsure how to finish. For not refusing to save you because you once treated me like I was worthless? Vivian's voice was quiet, but it cut like a scalpel. You're welcome, Mr. Ashford. I'm not you. I don't abandon people when they need me most. She walked out, leaving Julian sitting in the consultation room, his heart pounding irregularly, the truth of her words settling into his bones. Trevor approached cautiously. Sir, are you all right? That was intense. Julian watched through the glass walls as Vivian spoke with Dr. Montgomery in the hallway, her hand on her pregnant belly, her posture straight and strong. That was karma, Trevor. That was karma walking into the room and offering to save my life, while reminding me exactly what kind of man I am. But how did it come to this? How did a billionaire end up at the mercy of the woman he destroyed? To understand that, we need to go back 5 years. 5 years earlier, Vivian Laurent was 28 years old and believed in fairy tales. Not the princess kind, but the kind where two people built something meaningful together, where love meant partnership, where vows actually mattered. She'd met Julian Ashford at a medical technology conference in Boston. She was presenting research on minimally invasive cardiac procedures. He was there representing his pharmaceutical company, which at the time was a modest but growing operation focused on surgical equipment. They literally collided outside the main conference hall. Vivian had been reviewing her notes, not watching where she was walking. Julian had been checking his phone, equally distracted. Coffee had spilled. Apologies had been exchanged. And then they'd actually looked at each other. He'd insisted on buying her a replacement coffee. She'd accepted. They'd started talking and hadn't stopped for 3 hours. Julian had been different then. Ambitious, yes, but not ruthless. He'd been genuinely interested in her research, asking intelligent questions, challenging her assumptions in ways that made her sharpen her thinking. He'd made her laugh with dry observations about the pomposity of academic conferences. He'd gotten her email before they parted. The first date had been dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Cambridge. The second had been a walk along the Charles River that lasted until midnight. The third had been a weekend trip to Maine that turned into them barely leaving the bed and breakfast. Vivian had been in her second year of surgical residency, working 80-hour weeks and loving almost every exhausting minute. Julian had been building his company, pouring everything into developing better surgical tools, more effective medications. They understood each other's drive. Or so she thought. 6 months later, Julian had proposed at that same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first date. Nothing elaborate, just him across the table, holding a ring, saying, I don't want to build a life without you in it. Marry me. She'd said yes without hesitation. The wedding had been small and perfect. 50 people, mostly friends and close family. Vivian had worn her grandmother's lace dress, altered to fit. Julian had written his own vows. I promise to stand beside you through every challenge, he'd said, his voice steady and sure. I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as you support mine. I promise to build a life where both of us can be extraordinary, together. She believed every word. The first year had been good. Hard, but good. Vivian's residency was brutal. 36-hour shifts, constant pressure, the weight of lives depending on her decisions. She'd come home exhausted, sometimes still shaking from a difficult surgery, and Julian would be there with food, with patience, with understanding. His company was growing steadily. He was traveling more, taking meetings with investors, expanding their product line, but he'd always made time for her. Sunday mornings when she wasn't on call, they'd sleep in and make elaborate breakfasts. He'd show up at the hospital at 2 a.m. with coffee and her favorite pastries, just to see her smile during a break. They had a small apartment in Brooklyn with a view of the bridge. They had plans. Children. Someday, when her residency was finished. A house, maybe in Connecticut, somewhere with space and trees, growing old together. And then everything changed. Ashford Pharmaceuticals received a massive venture capital investment, $50 million to expand into biotech, to develop revolutionary new treatments, to become a major player in the industry. Overnight, Julian's small growing company became something else entirely. The pressure to deliver returns, to grow aggressively, to dominate their market, became all-consuming. Suddenly, he was traveling to Tokyo, to London, to Singapore. He was in back-to-back meetings with investors who expected results. He was making decisions that affected hundreds of employees. He was being interviewed by business publications, being invited to exclusive conferences, being treated like he was building the next great empire. And he needed a different kind of wife. He needed someone who could host dinner parties for investors, someone who could charm the spouses at corporate events, someone who could drop everything to fly to San Francisco for a crucial meeting, someone who looked perfect in photographs and made him seem more impressive. Vivian tried. She really tried. She rearranged her schedule when possible, though that was rarely. She attended functions exhausted, makeup covering the shadows under her eyes, smiling through conversations about nothing while her mind was still replaying a surgery. She bought new dresses she couldn't afford. She pretended not to notice when Julian introduced her as my wife, the doctor, with a tone that suggested both pride and resentment. But there were surgeries she couldn't leave, patients who needed her. Night she was on call when Julian had some crucial dinner. The fight started small. "You're never available, Vivian. I needed you there tonight. I was in surgery, Julian. A patient was dying. Think I can't even manage my own marriage. That's not fair. You knew what my career was when you married me. I knew you were ambitious. I didn't know you'd choose it over me every single time." And then the fights became something darker. "I'm building an empire, and you're still playing the hospital like it's some kind of hobby. When are you going to grow up and be a real partner?" Vivian had stared at him after that one, genuinely shocked. "My work isn't a hobby. I save lives. What you do, what we both do, is supposed to matter. What I do makes millions. What you do makes you feel important. There's a difference." She'd stopped trying to explain after that. The man she'd married, the one who'd valued her calling, who'd shown up at the hospital with coffee and pride, had disappeared. In his place was someone who saw her dedication as competition, her success as inconvenience. And then Celeste Winters entered their lives. Julian hired her as chief operating officer. Harvard MBA, McKinsey background, sharp and polished and brilliant at strategy. She was 32, beautiful in that carefully maintained way that spoke of personal trainers and expensive salons. She was single, unencumbered, available at all hours. She could travel anywhere on a moment's notice. She could work 16-hour days without complaint. She understood the pressure Julian was under because she was right there beside him, building the empire together. Vivian met her at a company event. Celeste had been warm, even kind. "You must be so proud of Julian," she'd said, shaking Vivian's hand. "He talks about you all the time. A cardiac surgeon. How incredible. I don't know how you do it. The pressure must be enormous." "It is," Vivian had replied, "but it's worth it. I admire that." Truly, Celeste had smiled. "Some of us are motivated by money and power. But people like you, you're motivated by something more important. That's rare." Vivian had liked her, had felt grateful that Julian had someone competent helping him manage the chaos. She never suspected. Looking back later, the signs had been obvious. Julian coming home smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. Late-night work emergencies that happened too frequently. The way he pulled away when she tried to touch him, claiming exhaustion. His phone always face down, password protected. But Vivian had been too tired, too trusting, too focused on her own demanding work to see what was right in front of her. Until the day everything shattered. It started as the best day. A rare gift. Vivian had woken up on a Tuesday morning feeling nauseated. She'd been exhausted for weeks, which she'd attributed to her brutal schedule. But the nausea was new and persistent. During a break between surgeries, she'd slipped into the staff bathroom with a pregnancy test she'd bought from the hospital pharmacy. Her hands had shaken as she opened it. Her residency director had made it very clear that pregnancy during residency was professionally inadvisable. She'd seen other residents derailed by it, passed over for opportunities, whispered about as less committed. But when those two pink lines appeared, everything else fell away. She was pregnant, going to be a mother, despite the exhaustion, despite the stress, despite the fractures in her marriage. She was carrying a life. Vivian had sat on the bathroom floor, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. A baby could fix this. A baby would remind Julian of what mattered. They'd be a family. They could bridge the distance that had grown between them. She made plans during her afternoon surgeries, her mind split between the precise work of her hands and the future she was imagining. She'd tell Julian over dinner. She'd make it special. She'd buy something tiny and perfect to present as a surprise. After her shift ended at 6, she went shopping. She bought ingredients for Julian's favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables, the bread he loved from the expensive bakery, fresh flowers. She found a tiny pair of surgical scrubs at a children's store, newborn size, with future heart surgeon embroidered on the chest. Perfect. She had Friday evening off, a rarity. She made reservations at Marcello's, the Italian restaurant where Julian had proposed. 7 o'clock. She texted him that morning. Dinner tonight at Marcello's? 7? I have something important to tell you. His response came 2 hours later. Sounds good. Vivian spent Friday preparing. She went home early to shower and change. She put on the green dress Julian had always loved, the one he'd bought her for their first anniversary. She carefully wrapped the tiny scrubs in tissue paper and put them in her purse. She practiced what she'd say. We're going to have a baby. We're going to be parents. I know things have been hard, but this is our chance to remember what we promised each other. This is our future. She arrived at Marcello's at 6:55, nervous and excited. The hostess seated her at a table by the window. 7 o'clock came and went. She texted Julian. Here at our table. No response. 7:30. She called. Straight to voicemail. She ordered water. The waiter asked if she'd like to order. Not yet, she'd said. I'm waiting for someone. 8 o'clock. She called again. Nothing. The waiter refilled her water, his expression shifting from professional courtesy to pity. Around them, couples ate and laughed and celebrated. Vivian sat alone, one hand in her purse touching the tiny scrubs, feeling hope slowly curdle into something else. At 8:15, she paid for the wine she'd ordered but not drunk and left. She knew where he was. Where else would he be? His office. Always his office. Ashford Biotech had recently moved into a gleaming tower in Midtown, all glass and steel and aggressive modernity. Vivian drove there on autopilot, still wearing the green dress, still carrying the tiny scrubs in her purse. The security guard in the lobby knew her, had seen her pick Julian up before. He waved her through to the elevators without question. The executive floor was dark except for one corner office. Julian's suite, light spilling from the partially open door. Vivian walked down the hallway quietly, her heels silent on the thick carpet. She was about to call out when she heard voices. Julian's laugh, rich and genuine in a way she hadn't heard in months. Then another voice, female, intimate. You work too hard. Celeste's voice warm and concerned. You need to take care of yourself. I'd work less if I had something to come home to. Julian's voice, heavy with implication. Vivian stopped walking. Her hand moved automatically to her stomach, protective. You do have something to come home to. Celeste again. You just keep choosing obligations over opportunities. Vivian is not an obligation. Julian's voice, but he didn't sound convincing even to himself. She's never there. Not really. She's married to her work. Then maybe you deserve someone who's married to you. The sound of a kiss, unmistakable. Then other sounds, movement, clothing, the kinds of sounds that made it very clear what was happening in Julian's office. Vivian stood in that hallway, one hand still on her stomach, and felt her entire world crack down the middle. She should have burst in, should have screamed, should have thrown things. Instead, she turned around and walked away, quiet as a ghost, the tiny surgical scrub still in her purse. She drove to her best friend Margot's apartment in Queens. Margot was a fellow resident, one of the few people who truly understood the impossible demands of their profession. Vivian knocked on the door at 9:30 at night, still in her green dress, mascara running down her face, though she didn't remember starting to cry. Margot took one look at her and pulled her inside. What happened? Vivian sat on Margot's couch and stared at the wall. He's having an affair with Celeste. I heard them in his office. I was supposed to meet him for dinner, and he never showed, and I went to find him, and I heard them. Margot's face hardened. That absolute bastard. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air. Margot sat down hard beside her. Oh, Viv. Oh, no. I bought tiny scrubs. Vivian's voice cracked. I bought tiny surgical scrubs to tell him we're having a baby, and he was sleeping with her while I sat alone at the restaurant waiting. Margot pulled her close. They sat like that for a long time, Vivian crying silently, Margot holding her, neither of them having words adequate for this kind of devastation. What do you want to do? Margot finally asked. I don't know. Vivian wiped her face. I should confront him. Demand couples therapy. Try to save the marriage for the baby. Do you want to save it? Vivian thought about Julian's voice in that office, the ease with which he dismissed her. She's married to her work, like her calling, her passion. Her contribution to the world was something shameful. I don't know if there's anything left to save, but she went home the next morning anyway, walked into the apartment she shared with Julian to find him in the kitchen, showered and dressed for work, drinking coffee and scrolling through his phone like it was any other Saturday. He barely looked up when she entered. We need to talk, Vivian said. Can it wait? I have a conference call with our Singapore team in 20 minutes. No, it cannot wait. She stood across the kitchen island from him. This man she'd married, this stranger. I went to Marcelo's last night. You never showed, so I came to your office. Something flickered across Julian's face. Not guilt, annoyance at being caught. I know about Celeste, Vivian said. I heard you. I know what's happening. Julian set down his phone and ran his hand through his hair. Okay, then I guess we should talk. I'm pregnant. She'd expected shock, concern, fear, joy, anything. Instead, Julian sighed like she just told him about an inconvenient scheduling conflict. Jesus, Vivian, the timing couldn't be worse. The timing? That's your response? The timing? We're barely functioning as a couple. You're never around. I'm trying to close a Meridian acquisition. And you want to add a baby to this disaster? Vivian felt something cold settle in her chest. I want to save our marriage. I want us to remember why we made vows to each other. I want our child to have a family. Julian laughed, bitter and harsh. Our child? Right. When exactly are you planning to fit a child into your 80-hour work weeks? Or were you expecting me to sacrifice my company to play house while you fulfill your medical calling? You told me you supported my career. You promised. I supported the idea of your career. I didn't sign up to be married to someone who's never home, never available, never puts me first. The argument that followed was the worst of their marriage. Voices raised, years of resentment pouring out. Julian admitted the affair without remorse. Celeste is there for me. She understands what I'm building. She doesn't resent my success. She actually wants to be my partner. I don't resent your success. I resent your betrayal. You betrayed me first. Julian's voice turned cruel. Every time you chose a patient over me. Every time you missed something important because you cared more about strangers than your husband. You want to know the truth? I'm in love with Celeste. I have been for months. She gets me in a way you never did. Each word landed like a physical blow. Vivian stood there, hand protectively over her stomach, watching the man she'd loved reveal exactly who he really was. What about our baby? Julian looked at her, and his eyes were empty of everything except calculation. I'll support it financially. Whatever the lawyers determine is fair. But Vivian, I'm done. This marriage is over. I want a divorce. Just like that. 5 years together. Vows made. A child growing inside her. And he wanted out because she committed the sin of being dedicated to saving lives. Vivian moved out that day. She packed her clothes, her medical textbooks, her grandmother's jewelry. She left everything else. The furniture they'd bought together, the wedding photos on the mantle, the life they'd built. Margot helped her move into a small studio apartment near the hospital, helped her call a divorce lawyer, made her tea she was too nauseous to drink. The stress was enormous. Vivian tried to keep functioning. She showed up for her shifts. She performed surgeries with hands that shook slightly when she was alone. She smiled at patients and colleagues and pretended her world wasn't disintegrating. At night, alone in her tiny apartment, she'd put her hand on her stomach and whisper promises to the tiny life growing there. It's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. I'll take care of you. I'll love you enough for both of us. But her body was being pushed past its limits. 80-hour work weeks while processing divorce papers, signing documents that dissolve her marriage while trying to remember to eat, to sleep, to take prenatal vitamins, crying in hospital bathrooms between surgeries. At 11 weeks pregnant, Vivian woke up at 3 a.m. in a pool of blood. The cramping started immediately after. Sharp, unmistakable, devastating. She drove herself to the hospital, called Margot from the parking lot, and by the time she made it to the emergency room, she already knew the miscarriage was quick and clinical. The attending OB was kind but busy. These things happen, especially under extreme stress. Your body just couldn't sustain the pregnancy. There's nothing you could have done. But Vivian knew better. She'd pushed too hard, worked too much, let the stress consume her. She'd failed to protect the one thing that mattered. They put her in a recovery room in the same hospital where she trained. Her colleagues tried to be compassionate while maintaining professional distance. Margot sat with her, holding her hand, crying with her. Julian was informed through lawyers. A text arrived 6 hours later. Sorry to hear about the pregnancy. Hope you're okay. My attorney will be in touch about finalizing the divorce quickly so we can both move forward. No flowers. No visit. No acknowledgement that they'd lost a child together. Just eagerness to finalize paperwork. Vivian lay in that hospital bed and felt something fundamental break inside her. Not her heart. That was already shattered. Something deeper. Some belief about the world, about love, about the promises people made. She'd lost her marriage. She'd lost her baby. And the man who'd caused both losses couldn't even be bothered to show up. The divorce was final 3 months later. Quick and clean. The prenup they'd signed as broke college students meant there wasn't much to fight over. Julian wanted out. Vivian wanted it over. 6 weeks after that, Julian married Celeste in a destination wedding in the Maldives. The photos made the society pages. Beautiful couple on a white sand beach. Celebrities and tech moguls in attendance. Articles about the power couple who were going to revolutionize healthcare and build an empire together. Vivian saw the photos once before blocking every social media platform, every news alert, everything that might show her Julian's face. She survived on work and spite. When she couldn't sleep, she studied. When grief threatened to drown her, she operated. She poured every ounce of her pain into becoming the best surgeon she could possibly be. Her attending physicians noticed, Dr. Laurent, you're performing at an exceptional level. Have you considered applying for the Advanced Cardiac Fellowship? She applied. She was accepted. She took a fellowship at Stanford, studying under Dr. Richard Chun, the pioneer of LVAD technology. She worked 100-hour weeks and didn't care. She had nothing else. No husband, no child, no life outside the hospital. So she became extraordinary at the one thing she had left. She developed new surgical techniques that reduced operation time by 20%. She published research that changed protocols nationally. She won awards. At 29, she was the youngest person ever invited to present at the International Cardiac Surgery Conference. At 31, Columbia Presbyterian recruited her to build their LVAD program, the youngest person ever appointed to that position. They offer her resources, a team, the opportunity to save lives and train the next generation surgeons. She said yes, and then she met Daniel Loron. He was a pediatric oncologist, kind and steady, with gentle hands and a quiet strength that was the opposite of Julian's aggressive intensity. They met in the hospital cafeteria. She'd been reviewing surgical notes. He'd been getting coffee after a difficult day. He'd asked if the seat across from her was taken. She'd said no. They'd started talking. Daniel understood demanding careers, understood the weight of holding lives in your hands. But he didn't resent it, didn't compete with it. When Vivian had a surgery that ran 12 hours, he'd text, "You're doing amazing work. I'm proud of you. Come home when you can." When she got called in at 2 in the morning for an emergency, he'd kiss her forehead and say, "Go save them." He pursued her patiently, respected her boundaries, never pushed, made her laugh in ways she'd forgotten she could, made her believe that partnership didn't have to mean sacrifice. They'd married 2 years ago in his family's vineyard in Napa. 50 people. Simple and perfect. Daniel's vows were short and true. "I promise to celebrate your calling, not resent it. I promise to build a life where you can be everything you're meant to be. I promise to love you exactly as you are." And Vivian had believed him, because unlike Julian, Daniel actually meant it. When she got pregnant at 33, Daniel had been overjoyed, also terrified. He'd read every book, attended every appointment, monitored her stress levels obsessively. "This pregnancy is different," he kept saying. "You're safe now. We're going to meet our daughter, and she's going to be perfect." And now, 7 months pregnant with Sophie, Vivian stood at the pinnacle of her profession, internationally recognized, sought after, brilliant, happy, and somehow, impossibly, Julian Ashford had walked back into her life, needing her to save him. If you're not already subscribed, do it right now, because the next part of the story will absolutely floor you. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever seen karma work this perfectly? Because what happens in that operating room will restore your faith that the universe keeps score. The week before surgery passed in a blur of tests and preparations. Julian was admitted to Columbia Presbyterian's cardiac floor, hooked up to monitors, his life reduced to beeping machines and scheduled medications. Vivian checked on him twice a day, always professional, always surrounded by her team. She never came alone, never gave him opportunity for personal conversation. Julian's world was shrinking. His assistant Trevor brought files and laptops, but Julian couldn't focus. His company's board was meeting without him, decisions being made. His empire continuing while he lay in a hospital bed, helpless. Celeste visited once. She stayed 20 minutes, most of it on her phone. She looked uncomfortable around the medical equipment, impatient with his weakness. "This is temporary," Julian had said, watching her check her watch for the 3rd time. "The surgery will fix it." Of course. Celeste had smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I have a presentation in an hour. You understand." She left quickly. Her visits became shorter, then less frequent. Then they stopped altogether. Meanwhile, Julian watched Vivian move through the cardiac floor like a force of nature. Other doctors deferred to her. Nurses lit up when she entered the room. Patients looked at her with hope and trust. He overheard a conversation between 2 residents outside his room. "Dr. Loron is a legend. I came to Columbia specifically to learn from her. Did you see that valve replacement she did yesterday? Textbook perfect. I heard she's going on partial leave after this next surgery. For the baby." "Yeah," her husband insisted. Dr. Daniel Loron. He's in pediatric oncology. They're like the perfect medical power couple. Both brilliant, totally supportive of each other, relationship goals. Julian had closed his eyes, those words settling like stones in his chest. 2 nights before the surgery, Vivian came alone for the final pre-operative consultation. She pulled a chair beside his bed, her pregnant belly resting against a clipboard. "Any final questions, Mr. Ashford?" Julian looked at her, really looked at her. "Why did you agree to do this? You could have refused. Conflict of interest. No one would have questioned it." Vivian tilted her head, considering. "I thought about it. Discussed it with my husband. Actually, he said the choice was mine. That he'd support whatever I decided." "What did you decide?" "That I took an oath to heal. That my personal feelings about you don't change the fact that you're a human being who needs help. That letting you die to prove a point would make me someone I don't want to be. Even after everything I did to you, especially because of everything you did to me." Vivian's voice was quiet but firm. "You taught me what kind of person I never want to become. Cruel, selfish, willing to abandon people when they're inconvenient. If I let you die out of spite, I become what you were." Julian felt his throat tighten. "I'm sorry for all of it, for how I treated you, for the affair, for what I said about the baby. I was cruel and selfish, and you deserved so much better." "Yes, I did." Vivian didn't soften it. "I deserved a partner who celebrated my calling, who showed up when he said he would, who didn't cheat and abandon me when I was pregnant. I deserved basic human decency." She paused, her hand moving to her belly. "But you know what? You leaving, as devastating as it was, freed me to become this. If we'd stayed married, I would have kept trying to make you happy, kept diminishing myself to fit into your life. I would have been competent but never extraordinary, surviving but never thriving. You destroyed me, Julian. But from that destruction, I built something you never imagined I could be. So in a twisted way, I should thank you. Your worst action became my greatest catalyst." The words hit Julian like a physical blow, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. "I'm glad you found happiness," he said quietly. "Your husband, your daughter, your career. You deserve all of it." "I know I do." Vivian stood, smoothing her scrubs over her belly. "Get some rest, Mr. Ashford. Tomorrow is going to be a very long day. For both of us." She was almost at the door when Julian spoke again. "Vivian, Dr. Loron, are you going to be okay? Doing this surgery while 7 months pregnant? Is it safe?" She turned back, and for the first time, he saw something like warmth in her expression. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm not doing this surgery because I have to. I'm doing it because I'm the best, and you need the best. This is my last surgery before maternity leave. I'm going out on the highest note possible, saving a life that most surgeons would consider too complex to attempt. Even mine, even yours." Surgery day arrived with the cold clarity of inevitability. Julian was prepped at 5 in the morning, sedatives to calm him, IVs placed, consent form signed. Trevor visited briefly. "The board sends their best wishes, sir. Everyone's pulling for you." But it wasn't the board Julian was thinking about as they wheeled him toward the operating room. It was Vivian, his life, literally and completely, in her hands. The operating room was bright and cold, machines everywhere, a team of people in scrubs moving with choreographed precision. And then Vivian entered, already scrubbed in, her surgical mask covering the lower half of her face. Only her amber eyes were visible, sharp and focused. "Mr. Ashford." She approached the table. Last chance for questions. Julian's sedation was starting to take effect, his thoughts becoming fuzzy. But he forced out the words he needed to say. "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" Vivian's eyes met his, and he saw something complex there. Not forgiveness, not friendship, something deeper. "Because 5 years ago, you made me feel worthless. You made me believe that my calling, my passion for saving lives, was a character flaw, that I was somehow less than because I chose medicine over being your accessory." She adjusted something on the surgical tray beside his table. "Today, I'm going to prove that everything you said was wrong. I'm going to take your failing heart and repair it with skills you can't begin to comprehend. I'm going to save your life not despite being a dedicated surgeon, but because I am one. Because I'm brilliant at what I do. Because I chose excellence over mediocrity. The anesthesiologist approached with a mask. And when you wake up, Julian, you're going to live with the knowledge that the woman you threw away was always more than you deserved. That your biggest mistake wasn't the affair. It was failing to recognize what you had when you had it. She nodded to the anesthesiologist. Let's begin. The mask came down over Julian's face. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was Vivian's steady eyes above her surgical mask. The eyes of someone who had walked through fire and emerged as steel. The eyes of the woman who had decided he lived or died. 6 hours passed in the operating room. 6 hours where Vivian's hands moved with absolute precision, placing the LVAD device into Julian's failing heart. Her team watched in awe as she navigated complications that would have panicked lesser surgeons. Pressure's dropping. One of the residents called out. I see it. Adjust the bypass flow. Vivian's voice was calm, controlled. Suction here. I need better visualization. Her hands never trembled, never hesitated. Every movement was deliberate, masterful. For hours in, Dr. Montgomery, observing from the gallery above, shook his head in wonder. She's remarkable. That connection she just made, I've seen surgeons with 30 years' experience struggle with that. Below, Vivian worked steadily, 7 months pregnant, saving the life of the man who destroyed her because she promised to heal. Devices in place. She finally announced, flow looks good. Let's start bringing him off bypass slowly. The team moved through the careful process of transitioning Julian's circulation from a heart-lung machine to his own heart, now assisted by the mechanical pump. LVAD is functioning perfectly, Dr. Chen reported, watching the monitors. Excellent flow rates. Close him up. Vivian stepped back, allowing her residents to begin the careful work of closing Julian's chest. She pulled off her surgical gloves and looked up at the gallery where Dr. Montgomery stood. He gave her a small salute. She nodded back. Patient stable, the anesthesiologist confirmed. Surgery complete. Vivian left the operating room, pulled off her mask, and found her husband Daniel waiting in the hallway outside. He immediately pulled her into a gentle embrace, careful of her belly. How are you feeling? He asked. Tired, accomplished, ready to meet our daughter and never see Julian Ashford again. Daniel kissed her forehead. I'm so proud of you. You saved him. I did my job. Vivian leaned into his shoulder. Now I'm done. Dr. Chun can handle his recovery. I'm officially on maternity leave. Good. Daniel smiled. Sophie and I need you more than billionaires with failing hearts do. Julian woke up in the ICU 12 hours later. The steady hum of the LVAD in his chest a constant reminder that he was alive because of Vivian's skill. She visited once, surrounded by her team, to confirm his recovery was progressing normally. The surgery was successful, Mr. Ashford. You'll make a full recovery. Dr. Chin will be managing your ongoing care. I'm taking leave. Thank you, Julian whispered, his voice rough from intubation, for saving me. You're welcome. She turned to leave, then paused. Use the second chance better than you used the first one. Julian, become someone worthy of the life you've been given. She walked out, and Julian knew he'd never see her again. The months that followed brought harsh lessons. Week 3 post-surgery. Celeste came to visit. Julian, we need to talk. He'd known what was coming. He could see it in her eyes. This is what I signed up for. The medical complications. The uncertainty. You're not the same man I married. The irony was so sharp, it was almost funny. I'm doing to you what you did to Vivian, Julian said quietly. Celeste had the grace to look uncomfortable. That's different, is it? I'm inconvenient now. I require care and patience. My empire is shrinking because I can't work the way I used to. You're losing interest because I'm not the powerful man you married. Julian, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. He'd signed divorce papers the second time, watching another marriage end, understanding that he created this pattern. His company struggled without his constant attention. The board forced him to step back as CEO, appointing someone else to run day-to-day operations. His empire, the thing he'd sacrificed everything for, continued without him. Everything he'd chosen over Vivian, gone. 6 months post-surgery. Julian sat in Dr. Chen's office for his final follow-up before transitioning to outpatient care. Your numbers look excellent, Mr. Ashford. The LVAD is functioning perfectly. You're on the transplant list, but given how well you're doing, there's no immediate urgency. That's good news. Dr. Chen hesitated. Dr. Laurent wanted me to pass along a message. She said to tell you that living well is the best outcome, that she hopes you find meaning in this second chance. Julian felt his eyes burn. How is she? The baby? Dr. Chen smiled. Sophie was born 6 weeks ago. Healthy, beautiful. Dr. Laurent is on partial leave, balancing new motherhood with occasional surgeries. She's, Dr. Chen paused, searching for words. She's luminous, happy in ways I've never seen her. Julian nodded, swallowing hard. I'm glad. She deserves that. He left the hospital knowing he'd never see Vivian again. That chapter was closed. He was alive because of her skill, but he had no place in her happiness. So what's the moral of the story? What can we learn from Julian's devastating fall and Vivian's incredible rise? First, success without character is meaningless. Julian built an empire, but destroyed what actually mattered. He had money and power, but lost a woman who would have built a real life with him. Real success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about who you are when you have power, how you treat people when they're inconvenient, whether you honor your commitments when they become difficult. Second, how you treat people in their lowest moments defines who you really are. Julian abandoned Vivian when she was pregnant and heartbroken. Vivian saved Julian when he was dying and vulnerable. Character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when you have all the power and no one could blame you for walking away. Third, rock bottom can become your foundation. Vivian's devastation, the affair, the divorce, the miscarriage, all of it could have destroyed her. Instead, she used that pain as fuel. She built something extraordinary from the ashes of her broken marriage. Your worst moment doesn't have to define you. It can refine you. It can become the catalyst that transforms you into someone you never imagined you could be. Fourth, the people you dismiss today may surpass you tomorrow. Julian treated Vivian like she was less than, like her call was a hobby, like she was holding him back. 5 years later, she was saving his life because she'd become the best in the country at what she did. Never underestimate the people you discard. Never assume that your definition of success is the only one that matters. Fifth, real partnership means celebration, not competition. Julian wanted Vivian to shrink so he could shine. Daniel helped Vivian expand into everything she was capable of becoming. The difference between the two men wasn't just personality. It was understanding that love elevates both people. That real partnership means supporting each other's greatness, not competing for who gets to be more important. And finally, karma isn't punishment. It's a mirror. Julian faced himself through Vivian. Every cruel word he'd said to her, every dismissive action, came back to him when he was a vulnerable one. Celeste left him the way he'd left Vivian. His empire crumbled the way he tried to make Vivian's calling seem small. The universe didn't punish him. It just showed him exactly who he'd been. Here's what I need you to do right now. If this story moved you, if it changed how you think about success and character and the way we treat people, I need you to subscribe to this channel. We share stories like this every single week. Stories that will make you think, make you feel, make you want to become a better human. Drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever witnessed karma come full circle like this? Have you ever seen someone get exactly what they deserved, good or bad? I read every single comment. Your stories matter. Share them, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We all know someone who's going through heartbreak, who feels dismissed, who thinks their life is over because someone treated them like they didn't matter. Send them this story. Let them see that the people who break, you don't get to define you. That becoming extraordinary is the best response to being treated as ordinary. Your likes, your comments, your shares, they help these messages reach the people who need them most. Let's build a community that believes in growth, in second chances earned through real change, in becoming people worthy of the lives we've been given. 3 years after that surgery, Vivian Laurent sat in her home office, reviewing a surgical textbook she was writing. Through the window, she could see her husband Daniel playing in the backyard with their daughter Sophie, now 3 years old, and their son Marcus, 18 months. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chun. Thought you'd want to know. Julian Ashford received his heart transplant yesterday. Surgery went well. He's going to make it. Vivian read the message and felt nothing dramatic, no satisfaction, no resentment, just a quiet acknowledgement that someone who needed help received it. She texted back, "I'm glad. Everyone deserves a second chance at life." She set down her phone and returned to her textbook, to her calling, to the life she'd built from pain and determination and refusal to let someone else's cruelty define her worth. Outside, Daniel's laugh mixed with Sophie's giggles. Her family, her joy, her evidence that the best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was living beautifully, loving deeply, and becoming more than anyone who tried to diminish you ever imagined possible. Julian Ashford, 3 years post-surgery, stood in the donated wing of Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. The plaque on the wall read, "The Vivian Loron Center for Advanced Cardiac Care, donated anonymously in honor of surgical excellence and second chances." He donated it through a shell corporation. She'd never know it came from him. That wasn't the point. The point was becoming someone who gave instead of only took, who honored excellence instead of resenting it, who understood, finally, that some debts could never be repaid, only acknowledged through changed behavior. He'd remarried, quietly, to a woman named Rebecca who ran a nonprofit. They lived simply. He'd stepped away from empire building to focus on meaningful work. He mentored young entrepreneurs. He volunteered. He went to therapy and worked through the narcissism that had destroyed his first marriage. He would never contact Vivian. That wasn't his right. But he lived differently because of her, because she'd saved him twice. Once on the operating table. Once by showing him that grace was stronger than revenge. 2 people, 2 paths. One story about what we become when we're broken, and who we choose to be when we hold power over those who broke us. Vivian chose to heal, to rise, to prove that the people who dismiss you don't get to write your ending, and that, in the end, is how you win, not by destroying those who hurt you, but by becoming so extraordinary that their opinion becomes irrelevant, not by seeking revenge, but by building a life so beautiful that you forget to be angry, not by making them suffer, but by succeeding so completely that their chapter in your story becomes just that, a chapter, not the whole book. Vivian Loron saved Julian Ashford's life with her surgical brilliance. But the life she truly saved, years earlier in the wreckage of her marriage, was her own. And yours can be too. Whatever you're going through, whoever broke you, however impossible it seems right now, your story isn't over. This is just the painful middle. The part where you decide who you're going to become. Choose extraordinary. Choose rising. Choose proving every doubt wrong by becoming undeniable. That's how you win. That's how you heal. That's how you turn your pain into power and your breakdown into breakthrough. Now go subscribe. Share this. Comment below. And become the person who survives their story and writes an ending no one saw coming. Because the best way to respond to being treated as ordinary is to become absolutely extraordinary. And that's a promise you can make to yourself, starting right now.